Welcome to Amanda Span's Minimal Viable Podcast, the show that gives you a real and relatable look at the world of tech and entrepreneurship from industry all-stars. In the world of venture capital, 92% of executive roles are held by men, and 78% of those men are white. Only 1% of the senior investment teams at VC firms are black. So today on MVP, I'll be chatting with venture unicorn Megan Holston Alexander, who'll be giving us a glimpse into her world as a black girl VC and sharing best practices for raising capital for your company. MVP is brought to you by Simplero, the all-in-one software for online entrepreneurs. Most digital coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs are using 7+ online tools that still don't meet their needs. Simplero reduces the headache of product management by allowing you to host your mailing list, online courses, membership communities, marketing automation, and digital products all on one platform. It's my personal go-to tool of choice for selling my ebooks and courses, and I think it's pretty affordable, simple to use, and easy to get started. So if you like to experience less tech and less stress when selling your content or products online, check out Simplero at Simplero.com. That's Simplero.com. Now let's start the show. Thank you for coming to the MVP podcast. We're very happy to have you, Megan. You're the first person we've had on the venture side of things, so it's really an exciting turn of things for us, and I think our listeners are going to be really excited. No pressure whatsoever. No pressure whatsoever. But I think it's going to be a really interesting turn of things because most of our listeners are entrepreneurs, right. And so they, I don't think they get as much insights and information from the venture side of things, or from the venture capital side of things. And so I think this will be really great and insightful for them. So we're really, really happy to have you. So I just want to jump right into it. And, I know you are originally from Alabama.
Yes, ma'am.
And,
you see, I had to add the ma'am. That's what we do in Alabama.
I heard it. So it's a long way from Silicon Valley, where you are now, in the Bay Area. And so I kind of want to hear about your road to VC, right? Your road to Silicon Valley. I know you used to work in nonprofit, in the nonprofit sector and that space. But what made you decide, I want to take my career in the nonprofit sector and transition into venture capital?
Totally. That's a really good question. And actually, it's like kind of two different answers. I feel like getting out of Alabama is one answer, one story, and then like VC is like a much later, different story. But essentially, kind of everybody knows Alabama comes, ranked pretty close to last on most things where you rank states. And, education, economic development, et cetera. We haven't even adopted a state minimum wage. We just use the federal minimum wage of $7.25. And what most people want to do is just get out. And so when I was in high school, I totally had that mindset, like, I have to get out of here. Like, I have to do something and, travel, and I want to try things, and et cetera. So went to college. Went to Clark Atlanta University, shout out, and I was on a path to be an academic. So my first career choice was to be an academic. I wanted to teach full-time at the university level. I wanted to do research full-time, work my way up, be the dean of somebody's college, work my way up again, be like a president of a school, all those things. And so I was following that path from undergrad, went straight into a master's at the University of Houston, went straight into a PhD in Ohio. And about a year into my PhD, I was like, this sucks. I was like, I don't like this as much as I thought I would. I didn't want to teach all the time, and I didn't want to have the pressure to publish research on my back. And so I made a really tough decision. I was like, I'm going to do a career change. And so I dropped out of school, and my husband is actually from San Jose. So that's how I ended up out here. Because we were like, either we can go back to Alabama where I'm from, or we can move to California. And of course, when you weigh those,
how did that conversation go?
It was a very easy choice. It was like, let's do California. So I dropped out. But the good thing is, I make this joke and I say that, in Silicon Valley, they say in order to be successful, you need a good dropout story. So it's like, boom, I got a dropout story. I'm ready to really make it in Silicon Valley. And so moved out here, and I had a really specific skill set. I knew how to do research. I knew how to do statistics because I had been in the academic space, particularly doing social sciences. Like, how can I put that to use out here? So started doing research work at a social service agency, got a call to work and do research for a philanthropic organization for professional athletes. And then it was my boss at that job who was like, oh my gosh, he's like, you're doing a really great job. You're like taking us to new levels. He's like, but I really think that you could do something way, way bigger. And I was like, okay, like, you just told me I'm doing a good job. Are you trying to get rid of me? I don't like it. And he's like, have you ever thought about business school? And I was like, Black people don't go to business school. I don't like these games you're playing with me. Let's not do this. But he kept encouraging me, and I said, okay, I'll look into it. Looked into it, and I was like, okay, like, this is kind of interesting, and I think I may get some value out of it. And so I originally went to business school with the idea to work my way up in sports. So I had been in sports philanthropy. I had been on the host committee for Super Bowl 50. So for the 50 Fund, which was the philanthropic arm of Super Bowl 50, I served on that committee. I worked with a bunch of different players and a bunch of different teams on their philanthropy. And so my goal going to business school was, okay, I long-term want to be like head of philanthropy for like the NFL or something. Had a skill set, had, the work experience, had really the connections to do it. And so that's why I went to business school, to kind of work on that goal. And while I was there, I took a VC class because it worked with my schedule. Didn't make me have to get up too early. It fit in some strange way where it made me not have to do something else that I didn't want to do really late or really early. And I fell in love, like obsessed, Amanda. It was kind of strange. I started reading everything that I could. I listened to podcasts on podcasts, started doing internships. I did 4 internships while I was in business school. You're only supposed to do 1 during the summer. And I did 4. And lucky for us at Stanford, we're really close to Sand Hill Road. So I kind of got to run up and down Sand Hill Road, having coffees with people, doing walks with people, asking people if I could come to their office and sit with them. I started a blog, a Black Girl in Venture. And so I really just became obsessed over those 2 years. And it opened up as a career path for me. And I'm really, really lucky. That was a very long story, but I tried to put it.
No, it's fine. It's good. It's rich. It's rich. I'm curious, what was that thing that you felt like really put you over the edge, that we're like, oh, I can't, I have to do this? Like, what was that moment, or what was the particular thing that you learned?
I think it's something similar to why most people like venture capital, is that it's the variety. And I had always wondered why, like, in my different jobs, it's not that I got bored after a year, but it's more so like kind of the drudgery of the same thing can get kind of tedious. And so I really enjoy the idea that, like, you can come in one day and be talking about, a new zero waste marketplace, and then the next day or by the afternoon you're talking about drones. And I think that's really interesting and really fun. And I also liked meeting the entrepreneurs, like people who are really passionate about stuff. Being from Alabama, like, we didn't have venture capital, but we had a whole lot of entrepreneurs because, again, education system is bad, economy is bad. There's not, unemployment is high, job opportunities are low. So you have a lot of people who are trying to create, something from nothing, right? There are no jobs, so people were creating jobs. My dad was a serial entrepreneur. I'm talking about serial entrepreneur. He has the most creative mind. He knows how to rig things. He knows how to, create things and build businesses from, the furthest corners of his mind. And he's one of the greatest business minds I know, but he never had venture capital. And I think about what people like him could do with all this money that was laying around, as opposed to getting, predatory bank loans and small business loans, et cetera. Like, these people are out here getting money with no strings attached. I don't know, it was a concept I didn't understand it. And I just thought about how could people that I knew take advantage, or how I could start supporting people that I knew were working hard on businesses, but never even heard of VC. Like, it blew my mind. It really blew my mind.
So you're in Usual Ventures now, and I know you guys are relatively new in the grander scheme of, like, venture. But I would love to hear a little bit more about, like, how you got involved with them and like how you knew they were the right fund to align with, and as well as the structure of the fund, because I know you guys are a little different than a lot of other funds, and you have a lot of other partnerships and alignment that I think in particular with like HBCUs that other funds don't necessarily tout.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I got involved with Lightspeed is that our founder, or one of our co-founders, John Briones, did I say Lightspeed or Unusual?
You said Lightspeed.
Yeah, well, he used to be at Lightspeed. That's what I'm trying to get at. But
okay.
We were one of the co-founders of Unusual is John Briones, who was formerly at Lightspeed. He was there for 12 years. And I met him during my first year of business school at a VC conference I was helping at. And I ran up to him after he did a talk, and he was amazing. And I ran up to him after, and I said, oh, my gosh, your talk was so good. You really align on, like, the way that I also think about venture capital and how investing should work. I'd love for you to be on my blog. And he said, okay. He's like, well, why do you want to be a venture capitalist? And, of course, I was like, I had no good answer. And he said, well, you think about that. I was interning at Omidyar Network at the time, which is a impact investing firm. So you think about that, spend your summer at Omidyar, reach back out to me in the fall, and I'll do your blog. I said, cool, great, awesome. Well, what happened is he actually reached out to me first in August of that year. I was like, hey, I remember meeting you at the conference. You were super motivated. I loved your energy. I looked at your blog. It's really, really great. And I have a project at Lightspeed that I'd love for you to come work on with me. I'm like, oh my gosh, awesome. I'll get to go work with him at Lightspeed on a couple of projects there. So I actually started with him at Lightspeed while he was still there. And so a few months later, he had this idea to that he wanted to start his own fund and would go out on his own. And I really believed in him, and I believed in what he wanted to build and, like, the interesting take he had on venture. Unusual was going to be really unusual. And so I decided that if he was going to go, I wanted to follow him. He offered me a full-time job opportunity with him at Unusual to help build that. I was like, totally, like, let's get out of here. So we left Lightspeed, and I essentially just moved with him from Lightspeed into Unusual. So I was there from the very first day, from its infancy to now.
How has it evolved since then?
How has the firm evolved, or my relationship with John?
Well, both, if you care to share.
Yeah, totally. So the firm, you know what, we haven't even hit our technical, July 9th was the day we, like, opened up our office last year. So we haven't even hit a full year. And I feel like we've done what it takes some VC funds years to do. It has been a really wild, amazing, fulfilling year. And just a little bit about the structure that makes it so wild and interesting and fun is that we are an early stage fund. We do pre-seed, seed, and Series A. That's our bread and butter. And then a couple of opportunistic things kind of on the outskirts, but the main thing is pre-seed, seed, and Series A. So our check size can be anywhere from $250,000 up to probably $7 million into a full Series A round. And we invest in consumer and enterprise technology. So we'll do your, IT infrastructure and your DevOps. We'll also do your next, social networking app, which I think is really, really cool. The fund is $160 million, and I attribute that a lot to, because raising a VC fund is really, really hard. I'm sure you've heard stories of, fund managers going out and trying to raise a fund, and they can't do it. But I attribute a lot of that to John's stellar investing track record. He invested in some of the biggest enterprise companies, for Lightspeed, and, those companies will kind of attest to it that he's a really phenomenal investor. And so I think that's one of the reasons why we were able to raise this first fund and make it a pretty healthy sized fund. And you mentioned kind of our partnership. So when we thought about who we wanted to invest in the fund, who, our LPs, our limited partners, we said, okay, we could do the same old thing, and we could make the rich richer and use kind of the same old institutions that invest as LPs, or we can reach out to other folks. It's like, yes, of course, we can bring in Stanford and Harvard because, you know, we've got connections there, and, you know, John went to Harvard and I went to Stanford. That's great. But what if we brought in other schools? What if we brought in HBCU? I went to an HBCU undergrad, and HBCUs don't typically get to invest in venture capital as an asset class because their endowments are much smaller, you know, than a larger school, so they have to outsource their investing. It's not like how Stanford has like a 12-person investment team, you know, to invest billions of dollars. It's much smaller than that. So when John brought up that idea, I was like, that is amazing. I didn't even know that was possible. And I think he could have taken two routes. He could have been not as serious about it and maybe like called the school to see and like, oh, I tried to get in touch with somebody and I didn't. But John was like, I'm going to make this happen. He flew there. He flew to the AUC and met with the schools to talk to them about investing. He flew to D.C. to talk to Howard and Hampton and the schools up there to see if they would want to invest and really walked them through the process. He met with UNCF to see if they wanted to invest. And I took that as a signal that he was really serious about the work that he was doing. And I can't imagine a lot of fund managers at, you know, large funds or any fund for that matter, taking inclusion and expansion that seriously and being that active about it. And so we've got,
it's totally rare. It's totally rare. I mean, I recall a situation here just in Chicago where it was a white-run publication or white-owned publication. They tried to do kind of not an investment series, but like a series of like small talks, like fireside chat style talks on investing into minority founders, right? And so they reached out to almost every VC in the area, and a lot of them RSVP'd and said, "Yeah, I'll make it. I'll be there," and everything like that. They followed up with them several times throughout the week, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll be there." And then the day of, none of them showed. And you know that is, right, and it's like, you know, this is in your backyard. It's not like, you know, we're asking you to, you know, travel across the country. Like, we're literally asking you in some cases to come downstairs or to, you know, to go a few blocks over to this office and just show up for these founders who are really excited to meet you and speak with you and to hear your insights and to hear their experiences. And, like, none of them showed up. Maybe one at the most. But it just goes to show you, it really speaks to, you know, how dynamic, you know, your boss is, and that he really is making an effort and taking great strides to back up what he says.
Absolutely. And it's meaningful. And kind of the other program that I'm really, really proud of is our internship program. And I'll just talk about it super quick. It's we've got, like I said, HBCUs as LPs in our fund, and we thought about, like, how can we keep these groups engaged with us throughout the life of a fund, because we don't want to just bring them in and then kind of just leave them out to dry and not, you know, be engaged with them on a regular basis. And we said, wait a minute, we got this huge problem in Silicon Valley about not having enough Black people in tech companies. You've heard the statistics. Google has 2% of their workforce is Black, and then on top of that, the 2% of the workforce is non-technical, right? They're in marketing or they're in HR. They're not in engineering roles. And so we've got this huge tech problem here, this huge diversity problem, but now we've got an inside track to this, like, wellspring of Black engineering talent through our HBCU LPs. And so we felt like we were in a really unique position to create this program where we could connect, you know, supply of, you know, students, Black students who are majoring in computer science and computer engineering who want to get into technology with high-growth tech companies in need of diverse talent. And so we just launched it this year. This summer is our first summer, and so far, so good. We've placed interns, you know, for the first time, and we're excited to pilot it, see how it goes, and then just expand next year. But the internship program is something that's really important to us, to get Black engineers in technical roles.
And that's really commendable, and I wish you guys continued success with that.
Girl, pray for it. It's hard, but pray for it.
I believe it. There's an organization out there. Are you familiar with Deaf Color? I think it's called Deaf Color.
I am.
Yeah, so I know they're doing a lot of work to kind of provide more so mentorship with engineers who are already there. So they might be able to offer some support as well.
I'd love to connect with them. I actually had them on my list of people to connect with soon. So hopefully I can, if you happen to know anybody there, let me know. But I'd love to.
Yeah, when I talked to them last, they were changing over leadership, but if the same people are still there, I'm pretty sure I can hook that up for you. So no problem.
Teamwork.
So, yeah, you can make connections on the call. So I'm curious to know, and I think a lot of other people are, who are both interested in venturing into venture capital, as well as people who are looking for investments. What does a day-to-day of being a VC look like?
Yeah, so for me, it really depends on your role. So you have people who are in a general partner role, like John, and his day is very, very different from mine. At the senior associate level, so I'm like a post-MBA senior associate. And my day right now my day consists of maternity leave of my baby. But if I were back at work kind of before May and again after August, I spend time probably talking to 3 or 4 founders a day of new companies that we might be interested in investing in, or that somebody has sent to me or connected me to, or that I met at an event, and kind of hearing more about their companies. I spend time during the week checking in on our current portfolio companies and seeing how things are going with them, if they have any needs that we can help with, any connections that we can make to other investors or partners that would be good for them. Checking in on their hiring goals and their traction goals. So I have a couple of calls like that a week. I'm also over our internship program. So a lot of my springtime, this past spring was spent on talking with career centers at the HBCUs, talking to the computer science department chairs, talking to the different companies where our interns are going to be going, making sure all of those things are aligned. I would say that was a huge, huge part of my spring this year. And then what else? Our academy program. That's our applications actually just launched yesterday. Our academy program is our version of an accelerator. And I say accelerator, but it's really not that. But I think that's the only word that people can connect to. It's a couple of weeks of programming to help you get ready for launching your company or taking your company to the next level. So it's a 7-week program. We bring in master practitioners. We do a whole application process to make the cohort about 6 to 10 companies. And I think when we ran it the first time in the fall, we could give a pretty significant amount of capital, and so I think it was really exciting for companies. It was between $250,000 and $1 million for participating in the academy, and I think that because we felt like there's no point in doing an accelerator where you get $20,000 or $30,000 because we just don't think that gives you enough to kind of rev you up and give you the kind of rocket fuel that you need to tip the scales of your company. We don't think it gives you enough runway to, have several months of planning and prep and execution. And it went really, really well. So we're doing it again this fall, and we're opening up to consumer and enterprise companies. When we did last fall, we just did enterprise. We're let's start slow. Let's not get too crazy. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But this fall, we are full throttle consumer and enterprise academy tracks. So that's what I spend my day doing.
And what
talking
stage
to entrepreneurs.
Companies? What stage companies does the accelerator take?
Early stage, so pre-seed and seed. Usually, by the time a company gets to Series A, they have a little better command over product market fit and their customers, et cetera. So I say pre-seed and seed. A lot of the companies have raised a little bit of money before, maybe a small, 100,000 friends and family, but that's totally not necessary. And anybody who would find, one, the content valuable, and then two, that level of capital valuable, right? If you've already raised $25 million, a $250,000 check isn't going to be super valuable for you. Or it could be. So kind of entrepreneur discretion, but the only thing that is super important for us is that they're open to learning and really get into the content and can make it to the session.
To give our listeners some context, I mean, I know a lot of people who are listening, there's a lot of startup entrepreneurs, but there are a lot of people who are just tech curious. And so to give you some context, like the amount of money this is an insane amount of money for most accelerators, I think, because it's the most of anybody that I know of. It's the most. Yeah, like it is a lot. This is a big deal, y'all. Like most people, when they run an accelerator, like there are accelerators out there that give you no money. They are just like, we're just going to give you access to programming resources, advisors,
which is also
mentors.
Valuable in its own way. Yeah. It's totally valuable.
It is, and especially if you're in like a niche industry or you're like a lot of the scientific research accelerators are like that.
Yeah.
And they're hugely valuable to them because you're not going to get access to these resources, this equipment anywhere else in the world. But for, more so startup and tech entrepreneurs, there's a lot of different accelerator options out there, and most of them will give you anywhere between maybe 25 on the very, very low end. On the higher end, maybe 150, maybe.
Yeah.
So to start at 250 is wild. And anyone
we knew that.
A seed company needs to be looking into the Unusual Academy.
Totally. And our structure may change a little bit in the fall, but it's still kind of the same concept, still the same amount of capital, but the structure may be different. So don't quote me on that. I'm on maternity leave. I don't know what's happening right now. But that's what we did in the fall, and it'll be very, very similar for this next fall. But yeah, totally apply. It's even okay if you're not in Silicon Valley, if you're willing to fly out and take part in the program. That's cool too. We've had people come in from Seattle. We had somebody come in from Boston for the sessions each week. So we're open.
Okay, dope. So now I know you get a ton of pitches every day, and I'm sure a lot of them are from like Black and Brown founders. Like, what is the biggest flub that you see when people are, pitching you? And like, how can those startups kind of rectify this and prepare themselves to be more investment ready?
A couple of things. So first, and it's probably a little cliche, but make sure you're going to the right type of investors. One of the things, particularly for Black and Brown founders, is that this community is totally new to us. It's still new to me. I'm still trying to figure it out. So coming in kind of fresh and not having kind of experienced the fundraising process before, you may just be like, I'm going to reach out to every VC that I can find, and you end up wasting a lot of like your time and their time when you do that. So, for example, we're an early stage investment fund. If you're not raising early stage capital, we're probably not the place that you want to talk to. Also, if you create and then you want to know our stage, so early stage, pre-seed, seed, Series A, $250K to $7 million, and then consumer and enterprise technology. But if we don't do like healthcare and medical devices, so if you've created a new type of like heart valve for hospitals, we're not going to be the firm for you. You'll probably do better at one of the healthcare investing firms, like a GE or something like that. So make sure you're going to somebody at the right stage and the right theme area for you. Also, if you're a pre-seed at your first go-round, you're not going to want to go to a Series B, C, D firm that does growth stage investing. So just making sure you're aligning with the investors in that way. Second, I would say, excuse me, and one of our academy practitioners, Andy Ratcliffe, he actually founded Benchmark, which is like one of the oldest, most elite venture firms out there, and also founded the company Wealthfront. He says, don't make your first VC meetings like your best VC meetings. Set up a few kind of practice ones of people who could kind of be a fit, may kind of not be a fit. But the people who are like the perfect fit, that are like kind of your dream VCs, don't make them the first people you talk to, because you want to get the feedback first, right? You want to make your pitch better and better and better until it's perfect, and then pitch the people that are like your big fish. He calls them off-Broadway performances. So do some off-Broadway performances, get the feedback, up your game, and then set up meetings with kind of the best to fit VCs. And then my third thing I would say is, I'm sorry, I have two more. I'm going to make them quick, though. The third thing is not thinking through the long-term life of your product. A lot of people come in and they have one vision for the product, and they think that that's all it could be. But the best brands out there are ones that have created a product that people love and can continue to innovate. And so you need to be thinking about, okay, this product is, this right now, but 10 years down the road, once we have, 5 million users, it can become this, and we can add this, and it can get bigger and better. That's what we'd love to. We'd love to see that journey ahead of time. And then the last thing is, the biggest flub is not putting together the right team. A lot of us think that, like, oh, I really love fashion, so I can start a fashion app on my own. But there's a skill set you need to build an app. There's a technical skill set you need. And if you don't have a technical person on your team, that means you're having to outsource all the technical work. And for us, we know when you outsource the technical work, it's not as fast, it's not as efficient, they're not as committed to doing the work. So we love seeing a technical co-founder on your team. Even if it is a fashion app and it's all about fashion, you have to have somebody that can do the technical side of the work, and a lot of people don't think about that. And so we want to see a well-rounded team that can do the full product together.
Okay. Now, I find that a lot of founders are kind of oblivious on kind of where to start with this fundraising process, and and I think there's, we, especially in the Black community, just not always having a family and friends around to depend on. We have kind of this unhealthy dependency or expectation surrounding startup capital. So what things do you think, I know there's some prep as far as your pitch is concerned, but what things should they be focused on as far as product is concerned, or their business itself, before they even start thinking about pitching for capital, even if there's a need? The biggest problem that I see with a lot of early stage startup entrepreneurs, people who either have a product or are like even in the ideation stage, is that there's an immediate plan to raise capital, right? But because of that, sometimes that just takes away focus from the product itself, right?
Yeah.
And so, what things, we talked about a little bit about like what they could be doing as far as the pitch is concerned, and like actually getting in front of you, speaking to you, and presenting to an investor. But what things are you looking for kind of in the product that they could be doing ahead of even thinking about making that pitch?
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of ways to think about it. So one, it depends on the type of business you're building, because some businesses need capital far earlier. Some businesses can raise capital without having a product. A lot of businesses can't. And so, for example, if you're building an enterprise business, which is a product for companies to use with multiple people, you're very likely to be able to raise venture capital without having a full working product. So you are able to focus on fundraising earlier to help you build that product out. And the reason for that is because VCs are okay with taking technical risk, but they're not okay with taking market risk. And what that means is, when on the business side of things, on the enterprise side of things, we know if there's a business problem, if you build a solution, there's a market of people who will buy it, right? It's like if you build it, there's no question that you will have customers. And so we're a lot more comfortable making an investment in an enterprise product that is not complete or not even built yet. It's just an idea. If you have an idea that can solve a big business problem, we will fund it without any traction, without an MVP, without, customers, right? So you can pitch that with nothing, with no product. On the other hand, if you're building a consumer business, VCs are not okay with taking market risk. And what that means is you're building a social networking app. I don't know if people are going to like it. It's very hard on the consumer side to figure out what people will like. There's no need for it. Who knew that people were going to like, you know, an app that you could take videos and they were going to disappear? No. You know what I mean? Like, people could love it, they could hate it. And so we're not comfortable taking a risk on consumer products that don't have traction already. So if you are building a consumer product, it needs to be at least have an MVP complete and some kind of early signs of traction and engagement, and that people like it and are continuing to use it in order for investors to make that leap with you. Does that make sense?
Absolute sense. Okay, so the flip side of this, like if someone, we talked about, you know, raising capital, but what if someone wanted to break into VC? What if they wanted to, you know, either craft out a path to becoming a venture capitalist or make a career transition into the venture capital or private equity space? Do you have any steps or recommendations that you would have for them? I mean, I know this path is kind of increasingly changing, and traditionally it's been, okay, go get your MBA and work in finance and things like that, but this is kind of diversifying a little bit. So do you have any suggestions for someone who might be interested in going into the venture space?
Yeah. So I would say you're totally right. It's starting to diversify. Because like I said, I didn't even know what venture capital was really until like 2015. And so tips, you cannot underestimate the power of networking. And as an introvert, and people will disagree with me that I'm an introvert, but I'm an introvert. As an introvert, that was one of the hardest things for me. But what I realized in business school is that I would like apply for these roles even before I was going to do VC, like when I was still thinking of doing a sports piece. I'd apply for roles. I'm like, ooh, yes. You know, I meet every single criteria on the job rec. I'm totally going to get. I'm at least going to get an interview. And I heard freaking birds chirping. Like, couldn't get anything. Nothing. And I'm like, I'm super qualified for this stuff. Like, I don't understand. And then one of my mentors was like, girl, you better start talking to people. You better start, like, reaching out to folks at firms. You better start asking for coffee, blah, blah. And remember how I told you I got 4 internships? Every single one of them was from talking to people. Every single one was from being at an event and going up to somebody or doing a cold email or a cold LinkedIn message or asking for a connection from a friend. So, you know, here's the thing. Should it be that way? No, right? Because it's really not fair. It is not a fair way that the process should work. But I found that, like, when you can network and build relationships, that's what's meaningful for people, and it gives you an opportunity to show your skill set or show that you want to learn. And so when I would reach out to folks, I would say, hey, you know, I may not be the best candidate for this particular role, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to work really, really hard, and people responded well to that. And so that is something that I can't take for granted, and if I told people that they shouldn't network, I would be lying. That's the biggest thing. And then the second thing is having a perspective. The reason why VC works is having asymmetrical information, right? Having some insight into some business or into some trend or into some theme area that other people don't have. If you could do insider trading in private in the private market and venture capital, like, it's all about asymmetrical information. That's what it would be. So you have to talk about why you can spot things that other people can't spot. What about your background is interesting to where you have an insight into a particular demographic or population or a particular theme. So I would say network, and then really try to form a perspective on a market and why your background yields a better return for that investment firm.
Okay. All right. So what do you see? I think that's good sound advice. I think people underestimate the power of networking. So like I think we talk about networking, but like it often involves going in some uncomfortable places, right? And talking to people
really
who
uncomfortable.
Like, you know, I just know, like, I get exhausted with, like, tech conferences, and I haven't been to a tech conference in a minute unless I'm, like, been speaking at it, because I just get exhausted with networking, right? Like, it's like there's that networking laterally where you have this group of peers that you want to be able to reach out to or just, like, have camaraderie with. And then there are people who are, like, for lack of a better word, stakeholders, or people who, you know, could possibly change the trajectory of your path, or, you know, people who could be prospective mentors to you. And, like, brokering that relationship with them and kind of getting in with them can be very, very intimidating. But, you know, what I found is, like, almost everyone that I've met with, even though, like, they may be, like, I have people who literally mentor to me who are billionaires, and, like, in getting to know them, everybody has something that they either need, that they want, that they have an insecurity about, and often it's, like, finding that common point of conversation to talk with them about how you can collaborate with them, like figuring out how you can offer some sort of value.
Absolutely. And I think offering value is really important. And then understanding, like, that I think one of the biggest points of needing to network for me was I was making a career change. And I knew that if I wanted to be successful in this career change, I was going to have to go above and beyond and, like, work my butt off in order to do that. And so that's why there were 4 internships. That's why I had to network far more than my classmates, because my classmates weren't going to, you know, like I said, all up and down Sand Hill Road. They just make a couple of calls to people that they know. But I didn't have that network at all, so I had to create it. And I really like your piece about showing value early, because I think beyond networking, that's how it is, like, in life. Like, if you start a job, the first thing you want to do is get in there, find out where they need the most support, and try to solve problems or kind of build opportunities in those areas to show value really early and make yourself, you know, invaluable and irreplaceable. That's what it's about, adding value in people's lives.
Yeah, and oftentimes I found that I'm, like, really, like, shocked at the things that people have, like, knowledge gaps about, or just insecurities. Like, I know people who've sold, like, 4 or 5 companies, and they're just like, I know nothing about PR, and I'm really insecure about it. And, like, could you just help me and advise me on what I should do with getting press for my company? And I'm like, like, you sold 4, you don't need me. But if you want me, you can have me. Like, I will offer any support.
My favorite thing is I used to be so mortified, and a lot of times I still am. I used to be so mortified of, like, talking to ask for things. I used to be mortified. But one of the biggest lessons I learned was that if you're talking to somebody about something specific that they like to do or they're good at or they've been successful at, usually what you're asking for is not that hard for them to do. Like,
it's nothing. It's nothing. It's like,
right. You think it's this
blink.
Exactly. You think it's this huge thing, like, oh my gosh, I can't ask him to, like, for this connection or blah, blah. I can't ask him for whatever thing. And then you ask for it, and they're like, oh, totally, of course. I get so happy when people ask me for stuff and it's something easy for me. You know what I mean? I'm like, I love doing easy stuff for people. Like, if it's something that I'm good at, or, like, for example, somebody, a friend of a friend wanted me to, like, look through their pictures. Like, oh, you're so busy and I know you don't have time, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I'll totally look at your pictures. Like, I love looking at pictures. I'll totally give you, you know what I mean? And so that's something that's easy for me that I like to do. So I don't want people to be afraid to ask, you know?
For sure. So I got just 2 more questions for you. Like, one, I wanted to ask you about, like, how you see venture capital changing, and, like, how do you want the future of VC to look like versus, like, what you think it might look like over the next 5 to 10 years. And then I have one listener submitted question for you, and it's really about, you know, raising capital. So, I'll first let you answer like what you see, what you predict for the VC space, and then I'll just kind of read off the question.
Okay. Let's see. What do I see for the VC space? I think we've got a long time until we get some racial parity or gender parity. I think we've got a long time until we get accurate racial representation. I think a lot of people are talking about it, but kind of as I mentioned earlier, people are passive and not active about making those changes. Even when it comes to, investing in more Black and brown founders, people are passive. They'll say, oh, if a Black woman's pitch deck makes it to my desk, I'll take a look at it. But on the other hand, when it comes to finding next Mark Zuckerberg, we're searching for him like crazy. We're like out at every event, at every dinner, emailing folks, LinkedIn folks, trying to find him. And I think in order for us to make that big shift and invest in more Black and brown founders, we have to look for them as actively as we look for the next Mark Zuckerberg. And I don't think firms do that. And a lot of that,
except for John. John is doing that, but no one else is.
Yes, John. And John is really amazing, but he will even say that he's still got work to do. He's like, he'll tell you, I still have a lot to figure out, and I'm not going to do it perfectly, but I want to learn and I want to figure it out. So, it's a daily process. It is a daily process. And I think not investing in more Black and brown founders is also a function of the representation at the firms. So getting more Black investors, and I'm super excited. When I was in my second year of Stanford, I was surprised at how many people who came in there who were first years who were Black who wanted to do venture capital and private equity. I was like, yes, like the numbers are going up. That's awesome. So getting in the role, staying in the role is going to be critical. But I don't think in the next 5 years we're going to see a meaningful a change as it seems like there would be, based on the way that the conversations are going. What else? I would love to see more diversity in limited partnerships, so more folks inviting HBCUs to be in their funds, inviting Black investment groups to be in their funds. There's a guy named Rodney Sampson in Atlanta who runs the Opportunity Hub, and he's created a Black investment group. I think it's called like 100 Black Angels or something, where they invest, become LPs in venture funds, which is really cool. But generally, I just think there just needs to be a lot more diversity of, people just try to say, we don't need necessarily diversity of race. We need just diversity of thought. No, we need all of that. We need diversity of race and thought and gender, all of those things. And so I would like to see it moving in that way, because I think that's how you get really interesting businesses. And that's the bottom line. We want interesting businesses that will make money. And I think in order to do that, we just got to shake it up. We have to shake it up.
I think it's critical to the future of the country, right? So the landscape of this country is changing, and so the consumer base is going to look a lot different. And if you don't have companies that represent them and serve them and understand them, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Absolutely. And so I've heard at least 2 times a VC say, oh, I made this investment because, the company came and pitched us, and I went home and I asked my wife and my daughter, and they said it was cool, so I invested. It's like, well, if you hired a woman, you wouldn't have to go home and ask your wife and daughter. You could just ask her. You know what I mean? Pay women for their work. You're not paying your wife and daughter. Pay women for their work. So that's kind of where I see VC going, and what I would like to see, rather. And then you said the last question was user submitted.
Yeah, the last question, I'll just read it off to you. Hi, my name is Zion. For the past year and a half building an MVP of my app startup. We're weeks away from release. So I guess knowing some context about this, they're going to beta soon. And I'm very proud of what we've built. But being that I bootstrapped the project, I'm quickly running out of runway, and my money is becoming a huge hurdle on the project moving forward. My immediate instinct is to raise a round of funding to keep us going, but frankly, I don't know where to start or where I should go about it, especially in this phase of my business. Any advice for someone in my position who surrounding funding who hasn't quite launched their product yet but is in need of capital?
Okay. a couple of things going on here. I'm going to assume, since he's talking about an app, that he's building an app, that it's a consumer app in some way. Did he say anything like what it is?
It is. It's a consumer app. I don't know the exact nature of that, but I know it's consumer facing. I've heard a little bit about, it's a little ambiguous, but I've heard a little bit about this product, just knowing a little background on the person who submitted it. That it's consumer facing, and I don't want to call it like a social network or something like that, but it's in that space.
In that space. Okay. So it's going to be kind of what I talked about earlier, this idea of like market risk. It's going to be hard to raise money if he hasn't finished the product, because it's difficult for, VCs to make an investment if they don't know if something that people will like. You have to show that people like it. So I would think that one of probably the best thing for you to do now is try to apply to like an accelerator or an incubator program, because they'll help you finish the product and they'll help you launch the product and start getting customers and traction and seeing how people engage with the product. Are they, coming back after the first day? How many times a day are they on it? How much time are they spending on the app? Like, that's the data that you need to get kind of a consumer kind of seed stage early investment. And so that's probably my biggest advice, particularly if you don't have access to like a friends and family round, because that would have been my first suggestion, is like do a small friends and family round if you can, to get you to that completion and launch. But if that's not possible, I think the best option is an accelerator and incubator. And if you want to email me, Zion, my email, I'll take a look at it and maybe suggest some accelerators that could be a good fit.
Okay, awesome. Well, you heard that, Zion. You got a new resource.
My email's really easy. It's just Megan@unusual.vc, UNUSUAL.vc. I'm happy to take a look and we can talk it through and figure out next steps.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure Zion really appreciates that, and I know our listeners will appreciate this content. So thank you for taking some time away from mommy mode.
Of course, do you hear him crying? He's out.
I don't hear him.
They probably just out there being crazy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time away. I know, this is precious moments with your baby and while you're on maternity leave, and I know you're still keeping it abreast on what's going on with the funds as well. So we thank you for taking the time out, and we're excited to roll out your episode.
Thank you, man. I'm really excited that we're getting to like talk more and spend this time, because I know that we've kind of emailed about a few different things over the last year, so I'm excited.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on. Girl, thank you on your success. I saw that you're just bumping on up the charts, doing it, so please keep up the good work, and if you ever need anything, you know where I am.
I appreciate that.
Thanks for listening to MVP. If you'd like to hear more from me or our guests, visit mvpodcast.substack.com for exclusive content, updates, and announcements. And if you love the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us, or follow us at The Amanda Span at MV Podcast. Thanks again, and see you next week.